Come on. Do you hear that in the background?
Yeah, it's great.
Cat.
Adorable.
Yeah. Shh, Vera, quiet.
Sup, nerds? It's basketball. Welcome to Horse, a basketball podcast about everything except for the wins and losses. My name is Mike Schubert, and I'm joined by my trusted co-host, the Bulls being in the play-in to the Knicks being in the playoffs. It's Adam Amawala. Adam, how's it going?
It's going okay. You know, earlier in the year, I would not have thought that the Bulls would even get into the play-in. So at least there will be at least one game that I get to watch that has meaningful implications for the Bulls. Hopefully 2, and then hopefully at least 4 to 7 more after that. So we'll see.
It would be very, very nice. We're recording this on April 5th, so not a lot of the playoff stuff has been locked in. My Knicks are locked into the 5 seed, and they are playing the Cavaliers in the 4 seed, which I think will be a fun series. The Bulls, I don't know if you're for sure going to be in 10. It's not sure exactly who your opponent's going to be. I think there's still, a couple of games that could go here and there. But at the very least, we'll be watching the Bulls, hoping that they can pull off the play-in upsets and get through those winner-go-home games and make their way into the true playoffs.
Yeah, thus far, a 10 seed in the play-in has not advanced to the playoffs. So I'm really hoping the Bulls can avoid that, because if you're the 10 seed, what that means is you have to win a game on the road, and then after winning that game on the road, you have to go face the loser of the other game also on the road. It's a tall task, but maybe if you and I have time, we can throw a little thing up on the Patreon of just like a 10-minute rundown once the playoffs are locked in and the play-ins have been determined, of just like, who do we think is going to win? So we can do a quick rundown before discussing it more fully in the next episode of Horse.
I think that'd be great. I think we do a little more winsy and lossesy extra audio to put up on the Patreon because, it's going to be an interesting playoff situation. It's been a very interesting year, just with teams being really close and like the Western Conference not being set. And there's still a lot of things that can happen, even with, 3 days left in the NBA season. There's still a lot that can change. And it's just been a very, very strange year. The East is looking way stronger than the West, which hasn't been the case in years past. So there's a lot of interesting things going on. We can talk about those interesting things, but to prepare to discuss those interesting things, we have to go into the Teal Memorial locker room. And I say we have to go. We get to go. It's a pleasure to be in the Teal Memorial locker room.
It's a privilege, I would say.
Yes. You know what else is a privilege?
Having patrons who contribute money because they love the show so much. We really appreciate that, especially new patrons, especially new producer level patrons.
Yes. So shout out to our newest producer level patron, Bunny's Not a Rabbit, which does have a question mark. And do you want to read the description that was sent in by our newest producer level patron?
Absolutely. Yeah. We always want to clarify and find out if the patron name is a reference to some sort of thing. Because sometimes it's like a Harry Potter reference or Percy Jackson reference that I'm not privy to. And then you have to clear it up. But in this case, it is Bunny's Not a Rabbit, with the question mark, and the description is sort of like being surprised that Bunny isn't a rabbit. Fair enough. They go on to say, also feel free to put any little twists on it that you feel like, so we can have some fun when we're reading the patron names. And just not a reference to anything in particular, just something they thought up. So, hey, we're all about it. You can be named whatever you want. That's part of the fun of being a patron, is that, within reason, as long as it's not something that is offensive, we will say pretty much anything that you can come up with.
That won't get us in trouble with people or the law or,
Yeah, if Kyrie Irving joins our Patreon, there's going to be a limit to what we're willing to say on the air. But, I don't think that's going to happen.
Oy, oy. Maybe Kyrie can watch 21 Jump Street, because that apparently cured Kanye West of his anti-Semitism. I don't know if you saw that Instagram post.
Oh, yeah, I saw it. Wouldn't it be funnier, though, if it was 22 Jump Street?
Yes.
It's like the sequel was what really did it for me in terms of my anti-Semitism. Unbelievable.
Well, shout out to Bunny's Not a Rabbit with a question mark. And of course, shout out to our existing producer level patrons, Polly Burridge, Kendra Hadley, Salvatore Testa, Trust the Process, Siobhan Ellsbury, He Sells Seashells, Don't Go Chasing Taco Falls, Bang, Bang, Roast Beef Debris, Kate the Conqueror, Basketball's Life 2, Denver Steam Nuggets, Anna Reed, Weird Questions, Caitlin Clark for 3.
Bang! 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 Oh, what a shot by Clark!
Oh, but it was blocked at the last minute by Angel Reese, who defeated her in the championship game.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Hi, Trish, Ginger Spurs boy, Nicole Arsenal, something mean about the Knicks, Stubby Boardman gets paid, Chase Underulo, Mr. Bubbles plays ball, and now Bunny's not a rabbit? Indeed. And you know what else is really nice to have besides having patrons?
I would say sponsors.
It is sponsors, and our sponsor for this episode is Shaker and Spoon. Shaker and Spoon is a delivery kit service that doesn't stink. They do a very cool thing, which is they help you become fancy. All you need to do is supply a bottle of liquor, and they will give you ingredients and instructions of how to make 3 different drinks, 4 servings of each with that liquor. And I've done boxes from them in the past, and it's very nice because you can learn to make different types of drinks. Some are sweet, some are sour, some are a little more savory, and it's a fun learning experience. You get to keep the recipe cards afterwards. You can impress your friends, your relatives, your parents, anyone, yourself, if you just want a challenge of becoming a better bartender. And if you sign up at shakerandspoon.com/horse, you will get $20 off your first box. That's about half off. The boxes are about $40 or $50. So that's a pretty good discount. And that discount can be yours at shakerandspoon.com/horse. Watch the playoffs and have a drink. Why not? So check that out.
I have to tell you, for having Shaker and Spoon as a sponsor, we received Shaker and Spoon boxes, and I hadn't used it for a while. We recently went over to a friend's apartment, and I brought the whole box. I was the cocktail guy for the night, and I have to tell you, I was kind of a hit. People were like, this has never been done before. I've never had somebody come prepared to make us cocktails as the guests. This is unbelievable. So if you want to impress yourself and or your friends, if you are company somewhere, I think it's also a great move.
Mm-hmm. Now, things that are also a great move is to check out Adam Amawala on the road or download Adam Amawalla's album or things like that. What's going on in your life, your comedy world?
Yes, I do have some fun things coming up. I'm going to be in Las Vegas the weekend after next. The only show that I'm doing there that is open to the public, I will be hosting at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club on Friday, April 14th at 8 o'clock. I'm told it's one of the best comedy clubs in Vegas. Brad Garrett is the guy who played Robert, the tall brother with the low voice on Everybody Loves Raymond. It's his comedy club. Yeah. And he's there a lot. I don't know if I'll get to meet him, but either way, I've heard it's a great room. I will be headlining the Albany Funny Bone just for one night. This is on Thursday, April 20th. So if you're a big 420 fan, whatever that means to you, feel free to come out to that show. I've got a bunch of...
You just love multiples of 5.
Exactly. Got a bunch of stuff in New York coming up, and then I will be doing 5 shows that I'll be headlining in Boulder, Colorado from Thursday, May 11th through Saturday, May 13th. And I think that's enough for now. So other than that, you can check out my albums, which have already been out for some time, and also my merch, which people have seemed to enjoy. You can find all of that on my social media, or if you go to adammamawala.com/standup, or go to my link tree, which is linked in all of my socials. How about you? You're wrapping up Tour Up, but you still have some fun stuff coming up. What do you have on the horizon?
It's true. I'm now complete with Tour Up. I'm recording this after the final show. Shout out to everyone who came to the shows. I very much appreciate it. But there will be more shows in the future. I just announced some shows in the US and Canada, which I will be calling Torth America Part 1. So if you live in Seattle, Vancouver, Cleveland, Detroit, or Toronto, I will be doing shows, and tickets for them are live. You can get those at Schubs, so schub.es/tour. And I'm very excited. First time doing straight up just live shows of my own podcasts in Canada. It's been a long time coming. And I've never been to Toronto ever in my life before. So that'll be a fun just experience for me.
That sounds very fun. Just be careful with that second T. I've heard the Toronto people, they say it more like Toronto. Oh. That second T, it's a real soft T. Okay, so you don't want to get in trouble up there.
You know, growing up in New Jersey and the capital of New Jersey being Trenton, which is spelled Trenton, but it's pronounced TREN''IN. Yeah. Anyone you say, anyone who says Trenton, you cannot trust them. You cannot trust them at all.
And God forbid calling Newark, Delaware. People get very upset. It's Newark, New Jersey, Newark, Delaware. This is a very important distinction, apparently.
I mean, that's smart because I know some people who get on the train from New York thinking they're going to Newark, and they're going to Newark, and that's bad.
Yeah, I would think it would be a dead giveaway when you didn't get there in 20 minutes. You'd be like, this is farther than I thought it would be.
I feel like no city should be allowed. If they're major enough, there just has to be one city. Like Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon should fight, and there should only be one that can win. Yeah. And then the other one has to be called like the Land of Ports or something. Like you got to change the spelling or do something. Like they should all fight. Like even when I announced the tour dates in Vancouver, someone was like, you mean Vancouver, Canada or Vancouver, Washington? Obviously Vancouver, Canada. Like the population is infinitely more.
Well, in Maine specifically, speaking of Portland, there are a bunch of cities that are named after countries. So it's like Poland, Maine, which is where like Poland Springs comes from. Mexico, Maine, like all these things that just sound broken.
Yeah. DC does a little bit of that where all the streets are named after different states. And it's, again, very confusing. But, you know.
Yes, incredibly.
What are you going to do?
But speaking of Torup, we did get an interesting note from listener Anna, who the subject line says, why everyone hates Sweden. And it just says, don't know what the horse listener base looks like, but just in case you didn't get info from anywhere else, we all hate Sweden because we all used to be ruled by them at one point or another in history. Now we're all friends, but if someone needs to be dissed on, it's always Sweden.
Right.
So I'm not actually sure where Anna is messaging us from. I guess somewhere that's not Sweden, but I'm assuming somewhere else in the Nordic region. But there you go. I didn't know Sweden was such a bully.
Right. When I put together the tour, I did it just based on downloads. And it just worked out that I went to Denmark and I went to Norway and I went to Finland, and Stockholm, Sweden just missed the cut. And all of those other countries were much delighted. I think they were happier that I wasn't going to Sweden, that I was going to their countries. And as I went to more and more museums, I learned, oh, this is why no one likes Sweden, because Sweden owned them at different points in time. So, And I think more of a present thing is people get mad that most often people, when they're doing international tours, if they're picking one of those places, they pick Stockholm and they figure good enough, and then they won't go to some of the others. So that was at least Finland's beef with Sweden. So I'm glad that I could turn the tables.
Cool. Well, should we go ahead and get into our NB Q&A?
Let's do it.
All right. So we got an email from listener Natalia. The email says, hey, basketball, parentheses, that is what the Gmail autocomplete suggested, and I couldn't resist. Love it.
That's because our Gmail official name is Basketball Jones, is what our first name and last name is.
That's hilarious. Amazing. Longtime listener, longtime emailer with a not-so-quite NBQ. It's so tangential. We'll be the judge of that, Natalia. I'm watching my beloved Marcus Smart and the rest of my cherished Boston Celtics, and I noticed the 76ers uniforms and got confused. Does Crypto.com really sponsor uniforms for one team and an arena for another? How do these jersey sponsorships work? Because that's wild. I also hate jersey sponsorships. The concept was created for football, meaning the real football, because they don't have any timeouts, therefore no commercials. We have commercials and ads. America truly is a capitalist nightmare. Thanks. I mean, no notes on that entire critique. I can live with the corporate sponsorships because at least they're tiny enough, but it is interesting that the Crypto.com arena is where the Lakers and Clippers play, but then Crypto.com also separately sponsors the 76ers. Do you have any thoughts on this whole dealio?
I know that there are instances where one sponsor will sponsor multiple things. So there was a point in time where the Dallas Mavericks arena, and I think it still is, it's the American Airlines Center. And then the Miami one used to be called, I think, the American Airlines Arena. So American Airlines sponsored two different venues for basketball, but one was the center and one was the arena. So there's an instance of that happening. The jersey sponsors, I didn't realize this until this NBQ&A, and it totally makes sense. But yeah, the jersey sponsors have been switching up more. I think people are signing shorter term deals with it, and they keep switching in and out. And I don't know that there's like that much restriction on the jersey sponsors, because I know for some of them, they are even sponsored by like the foundations of people who own the team. I don't know if it's still the case, but I think the Jazz jersey sponsor for a while was called like Five for the Fight, which I think was a charitable organization run by the people who own the Utah Jazz. So there've been some cases where, you know, it's not even just like straight up corporate sponsor. I think there's a bit more leeway. So I don't think it's necessarily a conflict of interest that an arena sponsor would also be a jersey sponsor. So I think it's just, you know, something that happened, and Crypto.com had a lot of money to spend, and then I would imagine they are not sponsoring anything next season.
Yes. I actually think that the Utah Jazz should play in the Shaker and Spoon Arena, because it's like, hey, all of the mixers, none of the booze.
Hey, you know, And then maybe we get a little bit of a cut for the suggestion. TM. Give us the credit to the Horse Boys.
Well, the funniest one is that the Denver Nuggets play in the Ball Arena, which when I first saw it, I saw the logo and I was like, oh, like ball jars, which it is.
Yes.
But also the Ball family makes missiles.
Oh no.
Did you know that?
No. How do you make mason jars and missiles?
My guess is that, like, they made missiles forever, and then their, like, one artsy kid was like, I want to make jars. And they were like, just go do your thing. We don't give a shit. And then the jars became really popular, but really, they just make missiles.
No way. Ball missiles? What? Oh, that just brought up a bunch of Nerf toys. That's funny. Ball jars missiles? Oh, wow. There's a history and timeline on ball.com/our company. They've been around since 1880. I want to know what came first. The chicken or the egg? The missile? Or
They're known for packaging and aerospace.
What the fuck?
I know. Isn't that wild?
Oh, gosh. Oh, man. Oh, no.
Maybe it's not missiles. I don't want to get in trouble here, but that's my understanding of it.
It seems like jars came first.
Oh, okay.
No, then it's missiles. Yeah. They got into aerospace in the 50s.
Isn't it funnier, though, to imagine that, like, they were already doing missiles and then the, like, artsy kid was like, I want to sing. And they were like, just make some jars.
Yeah. It's just really funny scrolling through this history because they just have all these significant things and it's alternating between major innovations in like the canning industry and then innovations in sending stuff into space.
Hey, we're allowed to have different interests. You know, that's okay. We can be multifaceted.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Let's try to get back on track. Let's talk about some basketball in Full Court Press. Get it like the news.
I do. And news there be.
There be news. We already talked a little bit about the playoffs, so I think we can talk a little bit more about the playoffs, and then we can get into something that you sent my way that I was unfamiliar with, and I think that'll be very fun to cover. But I think the most interesting thing to talk about in the playoffs right now is the Dallas Mavericks, who are just absolutely in a pitiful situation where they are 5 games under 500 as we speak. They are a game behind the Thunder to even get into the play-in. And it's just an embarrassing situation for a team that was in significant playoff contention last season. Like they were in the Western Conference Finals, right?
Yeah.
Them versus the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals.
It's who would have thought that adding Kyrie Irving was not the best move?
You know who would have thought? Us. You listen to that episode, both of us were so out on that trade.
Yeah.
Oh, and it is so bad that the Knicks, my beloved New York Knicks, now have to worry about not getting the Dallas Mavericks pick this year, which was always just this foregone conclusion. In the Porzingis trade, we traded a couple of picks, and this is the last thing that we have from the trade. And there's a thing in the NBA called pick protections. So you'll trade a pick and you can put some sort of protection, usually something like top 15 or top 10 or top 5. And basically what it says is, okay, we'll trade you our pick unless it's really good. And then we will give you our pick next year or after a certain amount of time if it keeps not conveying. So if you keep hitting these circumstances where you don't have to give the pick away, then it will turn into something like 2 second-round picks or 1 second-round pick or something like that, something that's less enjoyable. Right. So this pick that the Knicks have is top 10 protected. And the Mavericks are in a situation where they might be bottom 10 in the league, which no one would have guessed at all. I'm interested to see what we put in our drama draft for the Mavericks. Right. I really want to re-listen to our drama draft episode because I think we predicted some of the things that happened, or at least we were like, it could be bad if this happened. And I think that the Mavs are certainly one of those cases.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't think we went into that drama draft thinking that Kyrie and KD would be traded, but I'm sure that the Nets were high on that list just in terms of the drama that we expected. But yeah, as of this recording, which is Wednesday, April 5th, there are 3 games left for most teams. The Mavericks are half a game out of the final play-in spot. But just a very disappointing year. The Jazz, who everybody thought were going to be trash this year, still have a shot to make the playoffs. They're only a game and a half out of a play-in spot. So we will see how it goes. Right now, the Clippers and Lakers are tied for the final playoff spot. They're only half a game behind the Warriors, who have one of the weirdest years ever. The Golden State Warriors are 33-8 at home and 9-30 on the road. It's absolutely bonkers. Also, do you know what the Pistons' record is right now?
I'm going to say not very good. I would guess, isn't it? They can't have
They've
more
played
than 20
79
wins.
games.
79? I would guess that they are 17 and 79 minus 17, which would be 62?
Great guess. They are 16 and 63.
God.
Yep. Pretty bad.
And they were supposed to be better this year. I mean, they had the Cade Cunningham injury, so that's very unfortunate. But
yeah.
Wow, I did not realize they are worse than the Houston Rockets. That's impressive.
Right. But as of this recording, and this can only change so much because there are only a few games left, but from the number 6 seed to the number, I guess that would be 12 seed, so that's 7 teams are separated by 5 games in the standings. So a lot could happen in the next few days. We'll see how it goes. The East is a little more determined. The one thing to look out for is whether or not the Miami Heat can catch the Brooklyn Nets and send the Nets down into the play-in. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, as of right now, the Milwaukee Bucks look to be a lock for the number 1 seed in the East. The Denver Nuggets look to be a lock for the number 1 seed in the West. And a lot of other teams that are competitive. I would love to see the Kings do well in the playoffs. We'll talk about this more either on the next episode or on our Patreon. But pretty cool to see the Kings approaching 50 wins, which is, that would be quite an accomplishment. And, light the beam.
Yes, light the beam indeed. No, I think the playoffs are going to be very fun this year. And I really enjoy, because we're invested in drama, I think the way that the play-in tournament has reshaped the league, it has fixed the situation where the end of the season could be very boring, where teams would tank and intentionally try to lose so that their pick would be better. Now that there are 10 teams that are in like the mix for the playoffs, it gets more dramatic. And then there's so much drama because there's all the different stopping points. So if you are in the top 4, you get home court advantage in the first round, meaning there's more home games at your arena than there are at your opponent's arena. That's a huge advantage. So trying to get to 4 and above is a huge race. Then only 2 spots down, it's a big fight, like Adam was talking about, to get to be number 6, because if you are 6 and above, you are safe and you don't have to deal with the play-in tournament, where we've had teams in the past be in that 7 and 8, but then they lose in the play-in tournament and then they're not in the playoffs. Under normal circumstances in years past, they would have been safe. They're not anymore. So fighting to be 6 and above is huge. Then you want to try to fight to be 7 or 8 if you are in those bottom 4 play-in spots, because then it increases your odds of getting in, because you have 2 shots of making it in. Because basically, I think what happens is 7 plays 8 and then 9 plays 10, right? And then whoever wins between 7 and 8 is safe. And then whoever loses that game plays the winner of 9 versus 10. So if you're in 7 or 8, you've got 2 shots to make it in the playoffs. You just have to win 1 home game and you're set. And then you have trying to, fight to get to be in the top 10. Right. So it's just like every step down, 4, 6, 8, 10, there's battles for each. And it just makes things so interesting. And we've had teams fight that. We've had some teams maybe like try to lose so that they can play the Kings, because the people aren't actually afraid of the Kings, even though they were really good in the regular season. It's just made this end of the season so dramatic, and there's so much at stake. And that's why you have people like LeBron playing despite being injured, despite 2 doctors recommending him to get surgery, but then a 3rd doctor who LeBron himself called the LeBron James of feet, which is not necessarily a thing I want to think about too much. He said LeBron could play. It's just, you get weird stuff happening now because of the play-in, and it's so much fun. I'm so happy about it.
But I guess the final question about seeding remains, Mike. Do you know why 6 was afraid of 7?
Because 7 was looking like it was going to overtake them in the standings and be not in the play-in tournament.
It has the real energy of like why I was at Horse Hoops banned from Twitter.
Yeah, it felt pretty similar. Now, let's talk about the final bit of news here that I think we'll just talk about briefly. And I think we could talk about it longer and more extended, perhaps with the Tipping Pitches guys, since they know quite a bit about labor stuff and there might be more details to come out. But recently, the NBPA, so the National Basketball Players Association, and whatever the Owners Association is, they came together and agreed on a new CBA, collective bargaining agreement, that is making sure that there's not going to be any stoppage of play. There's not going to be any lockout. I think it's for the next 6 to 7 years. There is looking like there will be labor peace, and there's some new terms, and some things have changed. Unfortunately, a lot of the things that changed seem not necessarily like they're going to benefit the players. It seems like things that the owners would like, but at least we are avoiding a situation where there's going to be fewer games or a lockout or anything like that. So that is nice. But we do have a new CBA.
Yeah, so we'll share the article to this, but it's a tentative agreement for a new 7-year collective bargaining agreement. Kind of the major elements of this. One involves kind of curbing the spending of the highest spending teams. So this impacts the luxury tax. And basically, the league will be implementing a second salary cap apron, fun word, $17.5 million over the tax line, and those teams will lose. This has several key team building mechanisms, including the taxpayer mid-level exemption, utilizing cash in trades, moving first-round picks in drafts that are 7 years away. That's an interesting one. Blah, 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 blah. Basically, what this means is that some of the higher-end teams in this new collective bargaining agreement would not be able to sign some of the additional players that they added. So some examples of this, Golden State would not have been able to add Dante DiVincenzo. Milwaukee couldn't have added Joe Ingles. Boston couldn't have added Danilo Gallinari. So there are a lot of examples of these, but basically it involves spending limitations for teams that are like, if not the highest spending teams, up there. The most interesting thing that I thought about this new CBA was that there's been a lot of talk about load management, meaning when players, particularly star players, sit out some of the games to rest in advance of the playoffs. And in an attempt to curb load management and lost games among star players, the NBA is tying eligibility for postseason awards, such as all NBA teams and MVP, to a mandatory 65 games played. The 65-game minimum does come with some conditions. They don't mention what those are, so I'll be interested to know what that is. So what that means is that there are 82 games in a season. If you do not play 65 or more, you would not be eligible to be voted on for the MVP or first team All-NBA. Now, that's a little tricky because, like, let's say Damian Lillard twists his ankle and he misses 3 weeks and then he averages 35 points, but he only played 64 games. Like, then is that fair to not consider that person for MVP? But like anything that's new, I'm sure there will be some adjustments that need to be made. But I think in general, I like the idea of something like that, right?
Yeah, the idea is nice. It's unfortunate that the true way to get rid of load management is to reduce the number of games in a season. Yeah. The number that people have talked about is, I think, if you reduce it from 82 to 73 and keep the schedule at the current length that it is, you would never have anyone playing a back-to-back game, so 2 games on consecutive nights. And that is most often when people, or at least stars, will take a night off for load management. So that's something people have talked about. The other thing that I just don't understand, why don't you just make the season longer? Like,
right, we play indoors.
I like make preseason a little shorter or make it go a little longer. Like, I guess you want the offseason to be a certain length, but like, I don't know. If it just takes reducing the season by 9 games to make no back-to-backs happen, like, why not just make the season like 2 weeks longer?
We already have, like, but I guess that's the point, right? Like, the NBA always used to start around Halloween. Now it starts like mid-October. So yeah, it's tough because in my opinion, the playoffs are they're too long. Like 2 full months of playoffs is ridiculous. So do we want a season that starts in mid-October and ends like at the end of July? That just seems like too much.
I mean, I want that to never stop, so I'm down. Yeah. But yeah, what sucks is that I think the answers that make the most sense will never happen because of, as we talked about earlier in this episode, America being a capitalist hellscape, is that the answers that usually solve these things are fewer games. The first round of the playoffs used to be only best of 5 series instead of best of 7. That would probably help a lot. Right. Or just reduce the number of games in a season. But that stuff's never going to happen. The weird first round should be best of 5.
It's silly that it's best of 7.
It totally should be. Right. The thing with the minimum games played is that it's just, I don't know, you gave a perfect example there. It's just 65 out of 82, like, is still a lot. If someone's just a couple of games from missing it, I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to like look at the average number and like have it fluctuate, or honestly, it could be tied to minutes instead of number of games played. That could be something instead. But what will probably happen is something that every now and then happens and is really fun. Sometimes you'll see players have contracts with certain incentives, especially if you're an injury-prone player. You might sign a contract that's like, yeah, we'll pay you $10 million, but if you play 75 games this year, we'll pay you $11 million. And you'll see things like that happen. There was an instance a couple years ago. I'll see if I can find the tweet for it. But there was an instance where Drew Holiday was 1 game away from hitting a games played minimum with like 3 games left in the season. So the Bucks had him play at the very beginning of the game. He did the opening tip-off, and then he immediately fouled the first person who caught the ball and then ran to the locker room and then basically, changed and went to medical treatment and went home.
Right.
And he made like $500,000 by doing that. It's just the best way to make $500,000 is just show up, foul a dude, and leave. It's pretty good in terms of hourly rate. Pretty good stuff.
Yeah. My favorite badass example of that happening in a different sport, baseball reference. Baseball has, in fact, begun. I was actually at Pride Night last night at the Brooklyn Nets Minnesota Timberwolves game, which was really cool. But CC Sabathia was there, former Yankees pitcher. The funny thing is, A-Rod was sitting next to him, and they didn't even show A-Rod's name on the screen. I don't know if it's because people hate A-Rod or because A-Rod is now buying the Minnesota Timberwolves, which we also didn't cover.
Right.
But either way.
Yeah, he's already like kind of owned them for a couple of years. He was like minority, but controlling power. Right. Yeah. I wonder if it is they can't show him as a celebrity because he's an owner. That feels like some sort of thing.
Especially for the opposing team. But yeah, CC Sabathia famously, in his final start of the regular season years ago, had to get, maybe it was like, 6 or 7 innings pitched to hit a threshold that was going to bump him up like, I don't know, $1 million. But he hit somebody on the other team in an effort to defend one of the Yankees who had been hit earlier in the game, knowing that he would get ejected, because he was just like, I don't care about the money. Like, I'm going to stick up for my teammates. It was a pretty badass move.
I was watching that game live and the broadcasters were talking about it. And I think it was like $675,000. And he knew he was going to get ejected. And I think he only had to pitch one more inning, and he threw the ball at the guy knowing he would get ejected, talked an enormous amount of trash to the other team as he was actively getting ejected. And I'm pretty sure the Yankees paid him the money anyway. Like, I think they gave him the money still, but yeah, they interviewed him after, and his comment was basically, I don't give a fuck.
Amazing. All right.
So good.
So real quick, let's just run through a couple of the other most interesting parts. And then, as we mentioned, we can do a bigger deep dive at some point. But this one was really interesting. There may be an in-season tournament that could start as soon as next year.
Yes.
So this event would include pool play games baked into the regular season schedule starting in November, with 8 teams advancing to a single elimination tournament in December. The Final Four will be held at a neutral site with Las Vegas prominent in the discussions, sources said. This is all from an ESPN article. The interesting thing about it is, it says each in-season tournament game would count towards regular season standings. The 2 finalists would ultimately play an 83rd game that would not count in the regular season. Winning players and coaches will earn additional prize money. It's a cool idea. I just don't know how much people are going to care about it. It really is ultimately just regular season games.
Right. It's going to take the form of what the WNBA does with the Commissioner's Cup. And if you follow any sort of Premier League soccer or any of those leagues, it's going to be one of those things where different games count for different things. And I think it would just be like, this is a regular season game, but it also counts towards the David Stern Cup or whatever they end up calling it. Right. So I feel like most people aren't going to really care that much. And even when it actually takes place and they have the final game, the Final Four, or whatever, I can't imagine people caring too much, but the way they're trying to incentivize the players to care is that each player on the winning team gets $500,000 each. Now, if you're a rookie, that's huge. Yeah. If you're a 2-way contract guy, that's more money than your contract sometimes, or at least very close. So, like, that might be super intense.
Right. And that's actually a perfect transition into the final note that I'm going to add from the new collective bargaining agreement, which is that there will be an increase in 2-way contract slots, jumping from 2 to 3 per team. And what that refers to is players that you have on a deal that allows them to play in the G League, right underneath the NBA, but then they can come up on these 10-day deals. And this, I think, is great, right? It's a route for more guys to get into the league. And we've seen all these success stories, right? So some of the people they mentioned here, Austin Reeves, who's been great for the Lakers, Alex Caruso, who's on the Bulls. Then, of course, we've got the famous Jose Alvarado on the Pelicans, Max Strus with the Heat. There have been a lot of success stories over the past few years. So there's just a ton of talent now, and this gives more people the chance to come up and prove themselves. So I think that is really cool. But let's end it there. We've got more to cover, but I think that completes Full Court Press. Get it like the news, does it not?
It does complete it. We will pause. You'll hear some ads now. Some of those ads will be by us. Some of them won't be. They're locally inserted, so it might be based on your location. But once those are complete, we will hear Adam's That Actually Happened, and then my 3-on-3. So
today I present That Actually Happened. Caitlin Clark has arrived. As I've mentioned before, my knowledge of women's basketball was frankly very limited before joining Horse 3 years ago. And honestly, I give you a lot of the credit for not only teaching me about women's basketball, me kind of learning through osmosis, listening to you talk about it, but also for making me want to care about it because of how passionate you are. That being said, my increased knowledge has thus far really only extended to the WNBA because I just don't follow college sports in general. It's never been an interest of mine. But over the course of the past month, like a lot of people all over the globe, I found myself glued to the TV during the NCAA women's tournament. And let's be honest, if I told you a few years ago that in 2023, Iowa women's basketball would be must-see TV, would you have believed me?
I would not have. If you said some other schools, maybe like UConn or Notre Dame or Rice even, but no, not Iowa. I don't know the history of their program, but I didn't think they were like a powerhouse.
No, and historically they have not been. The ESPN broadcast, though, of Iowa versus Louisville, an Elite Eight matchup, so not even Final Four yet, had more viewers than any NBA telecast on ESPN this year. Let that sink in for a second. Incredible stuff. 2.49 million people tuned in for that game. And if you polled those 2.49 million viewers and asked them why they had tuned in, I would be willing to bet that 90% of them would just say two words, Caitlin Clark. So before we get into exactly who Caitlin Clark is and what makes her so compelling, let me start by saying that Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes lost in the NCAA championship to an outstanding LSU team led by standout Angel Reese. And I was going to discuss this anyway, but we got a question from producer-level patron Lobster Bisquet. The question says, what is your take on the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese situation? I personally have no problem with it. I think the hand gestures are part of what makes basketball entertaining and exciting. I see many opinions in favor of one party or against both women. Where do you two fall in this conversation, and what insights/perspectives can you give? So let me give some further context, and then I'll pass it over to Mike to get his thoughts. But there's been a lot of discourse over the past week about Reese's conduct at the end of the game, during which she kept making the "you can't see me" wrestling gesture and pointing at her ring finger, signifying that her team was about to be crowned champions. Now, a lot of people, particularly a lot of white men, were quick to criticize Reese, with noted arrogant moron Keith Olbermann calling her, quote, a fucking idiot, before later backtracking, and Barstool president/human game of flip cup Dave Portnoy calling Reese, quote, a classless piece of shit, really showing their class there, calling a 20-year-old a piece of shit. Now, this whole thing was complicated for several reasons. First of all, Angel Reese is black, Caitlin Clark is white. Caitlin Clark had been applauded for her toughness and trash talking throughout the tournament, including making the exact same hand gesture as Reese, doing the classic "she can't guard me" thing, and even giving an opposing player the Russell Westbrook treatment, refusing to close out on defense to bait her into shooting. Reese, on the other hand, has not received the same grace as Clark, and as we often see in sports, minority athletes are criticized for the very things white players are celebrated for. As an avid baseball fan, I can't begin to tell you the number of times I've seen a white player lauded for his, quote, passion, and then a Latin player or a black player accused of being too flashy or not respecting the game when he shows emotion. Now, honestly, the only thing that seemed a little messed up about the way Reese taunted Clark was the fact that she followed her around the court, like seemingly trying to antagonize her. But in the immortal words of Cat Williams, Clark talks trash, Reese was talking trash, it's part of the game, and ultimately this whole thing falls into the category of something we see a lot in modern society, a bunch of people getting offended on behalf of someone who wasn't offended. Like in an interview with ESPN's Jeremy Schaap, Caitlin Clark was asked if she minded the trash talk. Clark responded, quote, I don't think Angel should be criticized at all. No matter what way it goes, she should never be criticized for what she did. I compete, she competed. She went on to say, quote, we're all competitive. We all show emotions in a different way. Angel is a tremendous, tremendous player. I have nothing but respect for her. I love her game, end quote. Clark has 1 year left at Iowa, and Reese has at least another year left at LSU, and I, for one, cannot wait for the rematch. What were your thoughts on the whole situation? I would assume they more or less echo mine, but I am curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, for sure. And again, someone who is becoming more and more the voice of reason on these things, Shannon Sharpe, had a great take on it, and we'll put a link to his passionate, I don't want to say rant because he was correct. I would just say like his thoughts were exactly correct. Just, you know, we have a white player do something and everyone thinks, this is so cool. And then a black player does it and people go, that's disrespectful. And it's just a double standard that exists in America. And it only gets worse when it's women instead of men.
Right.
And it was awful. It was so stupid. I was very much in favor of Angel Reese doing it because, yeah, Caitlin Clark was talking trash the whole tournament. Mm-hmm. So when Angel Reese started doing it, I thought it was hilarious. Yeah. I was so on board with it. So much so that when I first saw it, I didn't see all the negative backlash. I just saw people praising it. Maybe I'm following the right people on Twitter.
Yeah.
But then eventually seeing all the backlash, I wasn't surprised, but it was just so disappointing.
Yeah.
Now, Angel Reese absolutely balled out. I think the only thing that could maybe be seen as unfair is that Angel Reese won Outstanding Player of the Year and Caitlin Clark didn't. I think Caitlin Clark probably had a better season, but Angel Reese had a better tournament.
Right.
And it's supposed to be for the whole year, but I think you can have a recency bias type thing and you want to give it towards the person who was on the team that won it all. But yeah, I mean, Caitlin Clark talked mad trash. And if you're going to get absolutely destroyed in the championship game, like they were down by like 35 at one point or something, you're going to get trash talked too. And I'm glad that Caitlin Clark has the right approach to it. It's disappointing that all these straight white men are upset about it for no good reason. They're just probably sexist and racist at the same time.
Right. And also, yeah, without being informed. Like Keith Olbermann said that about her, I think being a fucking idiot is what he said. And then part of his backtracking was like, oh, I don't really follow the sport. Like, I didn't know the context. Like, then don't comment.
Right. Don't say anything.
It's ridiculous. Now, literally while we were recording, I saw something on my phone that blows all of this away because it's so funny. So after the game, Jill Biden, obviously the first lady, was attending the game. And for whatever reason, I guess she was impressed by Caitlin Clark, whatever. The team that wins the national championship gets to go to the White House. And for whatever reason, Dr. Jill Biden suggested that, we should have both teams come to the White House. They both did such a good job. Like, it's just not the precedent. It's not appropriate. And yes, Caitlin Clark in Iowa had a great tournament, but like the runner-up does not go to the White House. It's just never been a thing. Mm-hmm. And I just saw a quote from Angel Reese, who is apparently not accepting Jill Biden's apology. And the quote says, "I'm not going to lie to you. I don't accept the apology. We'll go to the Obamas."
Oh, no. Yeah, and I got to say, Angel Reese has been speaking about this very well. Her post-game press conference was very passionate, and she was standing her ground, not just saying it's because she's a Black woman in America, but specifically just how she acts. And she says she's not going to apologize for how she is. And it's refreshing to see. And hopefully people can realize that, you don't have to fit a particular mold, blah, blah. The double standard is awful, and I'm glad that she is pushing against it and pushing against crap like that from Jill Biden.
Yeah, exactly. But with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about Caitlin Clark. Now, the comparison you've probably all heard the most is that she is the female Steph Curry, and honestly, it checks out. Like, what makes Steph so special is that he takes shots that for almost anyone else would be bad shots, but he makes them so frequently that they become a genuinely good option. Clark is the same way. She will routinely pull up from 5 to 10 feet behind the three-point line and splash in threes like it's nothing. The even more impressive part is that by now, everyone knows who she is, and she has a huge target on her back, but she still produces, and that, to me, is the sign of a great player. Let me give you some quick stats from Clark's record-breaking tournament. Clark set the single tournament scoring record with 191 points, a staggering total that is the most points any player has ever scored in men's or women's college basketball. The previous records were Glenn Rice's 184 points in 1989 and Cheryl Swoops's 177 back in 1993, both long before Clark was even born. But Clark isn't just a scorer. She also set the women's single tournament assist record with 60 assists, falling just one shy of the overall record of 61 set by Mark Wade in 1987, the same year that local legend Adam Mamawala was born.
Let's go.
Clark's game of the tournament was the aforementioned matchup versus the Haley Van Lith-led Louisville Cardinals that garnered almost 2.5 million viewers and sent Iowa to the Final Four. In that game, Clark became the first player in NCAA history to drop a 40-point triple-double, ending the contest with 41 points, 12 assists, and 10 rebounds. Absolutely outrageous. Clark immediately followed up that game with a 41-point, 8-assist, 6-rebound game versus the defending champion South Carolina Gamecocks. Shout out to Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird, who have fun with the Gamecocks. Becoming the first player in women's college basketball history to drop back-to-back 40-point games. Now, while in the final, Clark and her Hawkeye teammates came up short against a very, very impressive LSU team. Clark still put up 30 points, 8 assists, and 2 rebounds, despite dealing with foul trouble all game, including one particularly controversial moment in which she was called for a bullshit technical foul, which in college also counts as a personal foul, which I always forget about watching college sports. I won't really get into it, but on both sides, the NCAA women's final was a very poorly officiated game and absolutely needs to be cleaned up. Like, I understand that there's a lot of pressure on refs in big moments, the same way there's pressure on players, but my God, do some of these people have thin skin. It's real like small town cop energy with officials a lot of the time, just like offended at anything that vaguely questions their authority, and it's just not what people are watching the game for. But in any case, here are some other quick stats on Clark's outrageous tournament. She became the first woman in NCAA history to record 1,000 points and 300 assists in a season. So that includes not just the tournament, but the whole season. In the championship game, Clark drained 8 threes, breaking the previous record of 6. Overall, Clark's 32 three-pointers during the tournament shattered the previous record of 24. In the process of dispatching reigning champion South Carolina, who had won 42 consecutive games before falling to Clark's Iowa Hawkeyes, Clark scored or assisted on all 18 of Iowa's fourth quarter points. Side note, why do college men play halves? Can we all just play quarters? I don't get that.
I don't get it either.
It's weird. But finally, looking at Clark's career as a whole, in honor of recently retired Sue Bird, who actually stopped by a Hawkeyes practice during the tournament, here is today's edition of this person's accomplishments barely fit on the screen in their Wikipedia page. Here we go. The winner of the FIBA Under-19 World Cup MVP in 2021, Iowa Miss Basketball 2020, McDonald's All-American 2020, Academic All-American of the Year 2023, two-time NCAA assist leader, two-time NCAA scoring leader, two-time Big Ten tournament MOP. What's MOP? Mop?
Most outstanding player.
Most outstanding player, of course. Or just great with a mop. You
Great
know,
mop.
I've mopped
Great with a
before.
mop.
It's not easy, so credit where it's due. Big Ten Freshman of the Year, 3-time first team All Big Ten 2021 to 2023, 2-time Big Ten Player of the Year, WBCA Co-Freshman of the Year, USBWA National Co-Freshman of the Year, 2-time Nancy Lieberman Award, 3-time Don Staley Award, 3-time Coaches All-American. We have 3-time First Team All-American, 2 times First Team All-American from a bunch of different press outlets, 2-time unanimous First Team All-American, the National Player of the Year in 2023, USBWA National Player of the Year, the Naismith College Basketball Player of the Year, also 2023, AP Player of the Year, and John Wooden Award, all in 2023. Oh, and by the way, she just turned 21 earlier this year on January 22nd, which also happens to be Deborah Mamawalla's birthday. I mean, 2 greats born on the same day. You love to see it.
That's the true accomplishment.
It's true. And Hakeem Olajuwon, I believe. But I close by saying that Caitlin Clark actually happened, and she's still actually happening, and I can't wait to see what happens once she gets into the league. Same with Angel Reese, same with Haley Van Lith. Women's basketball has literally never been stronger, and it is a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be good. When they get into the W, it's going to be very fun. Imagine if they become rivals on separate teams, or, what if they became teammates? Oh.
It could be fun. It could be fun.
Story writes itself.
1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1. 3 on 3.
My 3 on 3 is inspired by a team that we talked about in Full Court Press, and we've been talking about a little bit throughout the season, and they got to get some love. The Beam team is here. The Sacramento Kings have arrived. They are securely in the playoffs. They are the 3 seed right now, which no one would have predicted. People at best thought that they might make it through the play-in or something like that. Right. Nobody could have predicted this, but they have broken a 16-season-long playoff drought, which at the time that it took place was the longest. Previously in baseball, in all of sports, it was held by the Mariners. They broke it last year. The Kings have broken it this year. Now it has fallen to football and hockey, where the Buffalo Sabres and the New York Jets are both at 11 season-long playoff droughts. So the Kings have passed the buck over to them. So inspired by them, my 3 and 3 is going to be discussing the 3 longest playoff droughts that then got snapped, and the 3 longest streaks of making the playoffs that then got snapped. So I think we start with the sad, and then we can end with the glad.
I think that's perfect. Actually, the most surprising thing about the Kings, especially given the Light the Beam thing, is that they actually have a better road record than they do home record, which I never would have guessed.
Wow, that is wild. That is wild. So let's start with the 3rd longest playoff season streak that got broken. That belongs to the Utah Jazz. They made the playoffs for 20 consecutive seasons from 1984 to 2003. I looked into all of these teams to basically try to see what was the reason that they didn't make the playoffs. It was pretty simple for the Jazz in this case. John Stockton and Karl Malone, who are both great at basketball, but now both terrible human beings, they both retired after that season. So the Jazz got way worse. And they basically, I think, each had 21 season-long careers. So basically, they made the playoffs when they were on the team. team. And then when they weren't on the team anymore, so basically they didn't do particularly well. However, Andrei Kirilenko was on the team, who still has the greatest and only legitimate initial number nickname that has ever existed. He was a Russian player. His nickname was AK-47. His initials were AK. His number was 47. It was perfect. No one should be able to do it anymore. We now have things like Paul George is PG-13, and I want to vomit anytime anyone says it. It's the worst.
Yeah. Also, I am of the opinion that Andrei Kirilenko should be the only AK-47 allowed in the United States. Where do you stand on that?
Would love that. I would love that. Yes, please, please. And give me that 1-star review, someone who's for some reason still listening to this podcast thinking that we would not be anti-guns. Let's get into the number 2 longest streak. That was for the Portland Trail Blazers. They had a streak of 21 seasons where they made the playoffs from 1983 to 2003. So it was the same sort of distance, or it had the same ending, but they started it one season prior to the Jazz, who we just discussed. Basically, the Blazers in that time in the early 2000s had a couple of runs of disappointing playoff performances, so they decided that they were going to rebuild. They traded away legends like Bonzi Wells and Rasheed Wallace and Theo Ratliff. But much like Andrei Kirilenko almost willing the Jazz into the playoffs, because the Jazz ended up being the 9th seed that year, just one game out, Zach Randolph almost willed the Blazers into the playoffs. They were 41-41, and they were in 10th place, just 2 games out. So a lot of interesting similarities between those two teams for the streaks. Now, the longest streak was 22 seasons held by the San Antonio Spurs. This streak lasted from 1998 until 2019. 1998 is famously when they got Tim Duncan after very much tanking so that they could get Tim Duncan after they had a key injury happen to David Robinson, and they got him, and then they were very, very good. What basically sparked the 2019 situation was in 2018, a player who's very good at basketball named Kawhi Leonard requested to be traded, and he was traded to the Toronto Raptors. The Spurs still made the playoffs that year, though. They made the playoffs with DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge and everybody else, but they just barely snuck in. They were the 7th seed that year. The next year, they did not end up making it. And it was a whole new look Spurs. Tony Parker at that time wasn't on the team anymore. Manu Ginobili had retired. Kawhi was on another team. And it was also the weird COVID-shortened bubble season. They were invited to the bubble, but they didn't make it out of the seeding games to make it into the playoffs. They were 11th overall, and it broke their streak. But, you know, good things are going to come to an end. But 22 seasons, absolutely ridiculous. Now, let's get into the situation where we have a little more fun, where teams get to overcome the sadness. So the 3rd longest drought that got snapped was by the Minnesota Timberwolves in 2019. They missed the playoffs from 2005 through 2017, but then they made the playoffs in 2018. And this was the very fun winner go home game. Do you remember this, where the Timberwolves were playing the Nuggets on the last game of the season, and the two of them were basically tied for the last spot, and whoever won made the last spot, and whoever lost was kicked out? It was just like scheduling joy and beauty, and it was a truly winner go home game.
I don't remember it. I feel like now all I can picture is Pat Beverly taking his jersey off last year.
Right. It was not that game, but it had that sort of energy. This was when Jimmy Butler was still on the Timberwolves. Yeah. So yes, this is when Jimmy Butler was on the team. He actually had knee surgery that season, and he had just come back. This is his 3rd game back from knee surgery. Of course, the Timberwolves won all 3 of those games. And of course, because this was a winner go home game, Tom Thibodeau, who was the coach at the time, who is infamous for playing players lots of minutes, before the game, he said that the Timberwolves might extend Butler's minutes guideline if needed. Basically, when players come back from injury, usually they'll say, don't play more than 20 minutes or 30 minutes. He played Jimmy Butler 42 minutes in this final game, which did go into overtime, so that could explain the longer minutes. But of course, I feel like Jimmy Butler also was in the same boat here. And it was a thrilling game. I remember watching this game. It was super intense because of the stakes. And I wonder if this game is what led to the play-in tournament happening, because it was just so cool and so exciting that I bet this was a major factor. It was basically the play-in before the play-in happened, and it was such a fun end to the season. And I also think because of time zones, it was like the last game. Right. It was really cool. It was super fun. And then the Timberwolves got to break the streak, so there was cool stuff on top of it as well.
Cool.
So now for the number 2 longest drought that got broken, ended up being a truly wild story. So this was the Los Angeles Clippers, who hadn't made the playoffs for 15 seasons, and they ended up breaking it in 1992. They hadn't made it from 1977 until they broke it in 1992. They had a weird season where they won their first 5 of their 7 games. Then they lost 6 straight. Then they won 8 in a row. Then they dropped to 21-24. They fired their coach. They had an interim coach for 2 games who went 1-1. Then they had the All-Star break. Then Larry Brown was the coach of the Spurs, but before the All-Star break, he had resigned, and then the Clippers hired him, and then they ended up winning 23 out of their final 35 games to make the playoffs. So just like a weird roller coaster of a season.
Yeah, very streaky year.
Super streaky. But then it got even weirder, because if 1992 in Los Angeles rings any bells, that was the year when all of the Rodney King riots were happening. So there was a police brutality situation where 4 police officers got off scot-free, even though they certainly went over and above and just needlessly used so much excessive force on Rodney King. Just a terrible situation that ended up having Los Angeles just be in riots for days upon days once that ruling came out. And where the Clippers played, which was called Sports Arena. Apparently it's called like Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena or something. But when they had this in the article that I'll put a link to because it really goes in depth about everything, I was very confused that they kept calling it Sports Arena. Like they didn't have the naming rights to whatever the arena actually was. But no, it was Sports Arena.
That's very funny.
So Sports Arena was located right in one of the neighborhoods where a lot of riots were going down. And this is when the playoffs were going on. So Game 4 ended up being postponed, and the league was trying to figure out, what are we going to do? Are we going to play it somewhere else? Do we play it in Las Vegas? So they were trying to figure out what that they could do. And the Utah Jazz, who they were playing, suggested, oh, you could play at our stadium.
Yeah.
And they offered to give the revenue to the Clippers, but like having extra home games, that would be a huge advantage. So obviously the Clippers didn't want to do that. The Clippers had to find a new arena because basically Los Angeles was in a dusk to dawn curfew. So you couldn't have any sort of nighttime playoff games. So the Clippers had to end up practicing in a local high school. The Utah Jazz had to do the same. And then what they ended up doing is having the game in the Anaheim Convention Center, which I've actually been to for VidCon in the mid-2010s. So they played there, though the issue with that is that it only had 7,400 seats. And at the time, 11,000 people had tickets to this game because they had bought their tickets before ahead of time, you know, when it was going to be at a bigger arena. So they had to figure out what they were doing there. Now, the Anaheim Convention Center had history with basketball. The Anaheim Amigos used to play there in the American Basketball Association. So I think maybe when I did that whole thing about the CBA, maybe I talked about it briefly. I don't know if they're the Anaheim Amigos. This article just said the Amigos. But the Amigos used to play there in the 1960s. And then they got relocated to, of all places, Utah. So just weird dots connecting all abound. So they had to make it so that people who had tickets could still go to the game. So the NBA made them set up a situation where there were other viewing rooms in the convention center, not in the main thing. So you could like sit in a conference room and watch the game, even though you paid tickets. And because of this weird situation, they set up all these seats and set up the court and everything. They did all of it. But the seating was first come, first serve, and there was no ticketed seating. So people got there way early and lined up and then rushed in and like literally ran in order to find their seats. And then no one left to go pee, because if you left to go to the bathroom, people would steal your seat.
Whose idea was it, when you reschedule a game to a new venue because of rioting, to try to create a situation that could lead to a riot?
I think it was just so quick and it was so rushed that they couldn't do things. And it was also the early 90s where they couldn't like implement assigned seatings and digital tickets and all that sort of thing. Like, it was just so complex. But You're right. It just made an absolute mess. There was even an electrical failure in the first quarter, which caused the officials to have to use handheld air horns, like beep, 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 instead of the buzzer.
You sound like every DJ on Hot 97.
Right, but they set the tone. Who knew this would become a trend? The Clippers ended up winning this wild game, but they lost the series. But just a truly ridiculous ending.
Indeed, yeah.
To a joyous season. Now, we've already alluded to the number one. That is the Sacramento Kings. They had a 16-season-long streak that they snapped. 2007 to now, 2003, they are back in the mix. And Marcos Breton, who is a writer for the Sacramento Bee, had an amazing quote about it. Quote, "This city, this region, and this fan base deserve to be happy after 16 straight losing seasons, 16 straight seasons of missing the playoffs, a public fight with the previous owners, multiple threats of a Kings relocation to other cities, breathless campaigns to keep the Kings here, 13 coaching changes and ownership change, multiple horrendous NBA draft picks that flopped, the construction of Golden One Center, and the demolition of the building once called Arco Arena. All that had been missing from this saga were the Locusts."
Oh, wow.
What a quote. So they also, in this article from the Sacramento Bee, said that the last time the Kings had made the playoffs, the iPhone didn't exist, Twitter wasn't public until 2 months later, and the current Kings players, De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and Keegan Murray, were 8, 10, and 5 respectively.
Wow.
Now, there's something I also heard on an ESPN show. They said that no current player in the NBA in the year 2023, no current player has ever played the Kings in the playoffs. So you think of some of these older players like LeBron James, those kind of guys, they've never played the Kings in the playoffs. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, I know LeBron's first game in the NBA was at Sacramento, but it was not a playoff game, obviously.
Exactly. So just a weird phenomenon. Now, the Kings have been just absolutely been celebrating this. They put together a receipts video that we will play, where specifically just a lot of talking heads this season didn't believe that the Kings were going to make it. Interestingly enough, it showed like Kendrick Perkins 5 different times. So it wasn't like a lot of people doubted them. It was just Kendrick Perkins doubted them consistently. And I really don't like his coverage on ESPN.
Wait, Kendrick Perkins was wrong about something? No.
He's so frustrating. I really don't like him. He's a failed attempt at an ESPN Charles Barkley. He's not good. It's very frustrating. But the Kings have their receipts. They have been really living it up as they should. And obviously, the beam is the reason. The victory beam, as we've talked about this season, they have a big beam now that they shoot up into the sky whenever they win a home game. This beam is powered by 6 lasers, and it was approved by the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, because as we talked about earlier, when they introduced it, you could see it from space, or at least the people making it said that you could. And now we have the beam. And we have what might even be better than the beam is the chant. When the Kings are looking like they are about to win a game, the arena just chants, "Light the beam, light the beam, light the beam." And then after the game is over, someone will come and push a button that is certainly hooked up to the beam and is not just a symbolic button. And someone will push the button and then light the beam. And I cannot wait to see playoff light the beam. And I can't wait to hear playoff light the beam chants and see playoff beams being lit. It's just going to be so good. Shout out to the Kings. And that is my 3-on-3. Get hyped for the 5-on-5 where I talk about the other stuff. But yes, Kings, take your victory lap. You deserve it. Best of luck. Oh, it's just going to be great.
Love it. Hey, go Kings.
Go Kings. Thanks for listening to this episode of Horse. Horse is hosted by Adam Amawala and Mike Schubert. Our editor is Kensei Soramaki. The website is by Kelly Schubert. The art is by Alison Wakeman. The music is by Bettina Gambamanes. And the social media is by both of the Horse Boys.
Thank you to our producer-level patrons, Polly Burridge, Kendra Hadley, Salvatore Testa, Trust the Process, Siobhan Ellsbury, He Sells Seashells, Don't Go Chasing Taco Falls, Bang, Bang, Roast Beef Debris, Kay the Conqueror, Basketball is Life 2, Denver Steam Nuggets, Anna Reed, Weird Questions, Angel Reese for 3.
And it went in this time. Oh, you can't see me taunt. Ring pointing taunt. Ah.
Hi Trish, Ginger Spurs Boy, Nicole Arsenal, Something Mean About the Knicks, Stubby Boardman Gets Paid, Chase Underulo, Mr. Bubbles Plays Ball, and Bunny's Not a Rabbit? Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Horse Hoops and on Twitter at Horse_Hoops because
Horse Hoops the person who ran that account actually ran the account for the Spurs, and that's secretly why their really long streak got broken. So then, all their Twitter accounts just had to get shut down. Pop called in some favors, got them shut down.
Oh, I see. I thought @HorseHoops might have been talking shit about Angel Reese, and they shouldn't have been.
They should not have been. It's a poor decision. Don't do it.
Go to our website, horsehoops.com, for links to a lot of the fun stuff we talked about today, including some of the Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese drama in the championship game, some Light the Beam content, all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to support the Horse Boys, you can do so at Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/horsehoops, get access to bonus content, bonus audio, videos. We've done a whole lot of extra stuff when the playoffs come around, so I could see us doing more of that. So now's the best time to join the Patreon. We put up things just for all patrons when it's playoff time, so join now. You can also get merch if you go to horsehoops.com/merch. You can get Sup Nerds shirts. You can get digital stuff like our past live streams. I still got to work to get the one that we did recently, our poem-based one up there, but I'll work towards getting that up so you can get access to that as well. We're going to close out this episode by doing what we always do, which is putting our hands in the middle and saying something on the count of three. I think with both of our teams in the mix, I think we just got to say go Bulls, go Knicks on three.
All right, so I guess we say our own teams. I can't expect you to say, let's...
No, look, I'm rooting for the Bulls. I want you to get through in the plan. So I will be saying go Bulls, go Knicks.
Let's do it.
All right, let's see.
One, two, three. Go Bulls, go Knicks!
Oh, it'll be fun. Imagine if we find a way to play each other.
It would have to be in the conference championship probably, and it seems unlikely.
I'll take it.
But you never
I'll take it though. I'll take it.
There would be some blood in the garden, I dare say.